This is the Film Geeks podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Film Geeks podcast powered by Indian Nerve. And this is your host, Abhishek, and joining me as always are my comrades and cohorts, Anir and Arindam. So how are you guys doing today?
All is good, man. All is good. I think it's been kind of a slow week in terms of what I've been able to achieve. I think all in all, it's still been productive because there are a lot of things I've released, and we're going to talk about a few of those this episode. But I think it's all great. I think as far as things are going, I think Arindam has been the luckiest out of the three of us. Arindam, why don't you go ahead and tell us what's been up for you?
Luck has been a major factor for me, especially this weekend. I was lucky enough to see the advanced screening for Baby Driver. So Comic-Con India has been way ahead of its time. I don't know what kind of deal they've roped in, but we do get invites every time from the Indian site. So luckily I was enough to get that, and Aditya, who's also one of our podcasters, he was lucky enough to see it with me. And man, you guys have a treat, ahead of you. Hopefully it releases wide enough all over India, because this movie just deserves to be seen in the big screen. It's amazing. Like, I can't describe to you, it's something like you've never seen before, but it's also reminiscent of things that you've always seen in really good movies. If you're a fan of those 70s action capers, this movie is for you. If you're a fan of those 90s action thriller movies, this movie is for you. If you're a fan of just Edgar Wright, this is a movie for you. This, I believe, is his most accessible movie till date. All his other movies, it was for a niche audience, but he has Hollywoodized this movie, since this is first big movie that you can say that he has made, other than Scott Pilgrim, I would say. But Scott Pilgrim again was a genre movie, but this is a pure Hollywood movie. And it's wonderful how he has taken his entire style and adapted it for the mainstream audience. This is true romance meets Bullet. It's amazing. The sound editing will just blow everyone away. What he does is, Tarantino, he's famous for writing, he listens to a song and he writes scenes around them. And this is taken to just another level. Even, if a song is going on in the background, he makes sure that everything that is taking place on screen will mimic the rhythm of that song. I have seen it done in a cartoon that I can't recall before, but this happens for entire sequences. And the stunts, the practical effects are just too good. The plot is amazing. You guys will just love it. And also, this movie is surprisingly violent. Like all of Edgar Wright's movies, the twists and the turns, they come out of nowhere, and this is no different. I would definitely recommend you guys to check it out in the theater.
I love Edgar Wright. I've always loved how he has always made different movies. I think the first movie that I caught from his was obviously the ones he's been making with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. I love those movies. I mean, there's no way that you can not love Shaun of the Dead. To some extent, I even liked Scott Pilgrim, but it's because I'm a big fan of the comic series that came out. But I understand what you're saying when you say that it's totally very, very niche movies that he made for specific audiences. So in that sense, I'm very excited with what you're saying about this movie being totally very different to what people are expecting. And I think this is also one of the reasons why he has been mentioned. It's coming out in the news that he left Ant-Man, and because they expected him to make a totally generic movie without having his stamp on it. So that is also why the other news is quite relevant in recent time, which is the Han Solo movie losing their directors. I think Abhishek will have quite a few words on that topic.
This is one of the biggest news to ever come out on a very slow news week that has been this week. Ron Howard, in fact, will be stepping in to direct the upcoming Han Solo spin-off film after the original director stepped down 2 days ago. And of course, Lucasfilm announced on Friday, I think, that the veteran director will be taking over from the previous directors, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who left the film over creative differences with Disney's Lucasfilm. Of course, the Untitled spin-off film is scheduled to hit theaters in May 25, 2018. And it will star Alden Ehrenreich as the young version of the scruffy-looking smuggler, and it tells the origin story of the character made famous by Harrison Ford. It also stars Donald Glover, who will play Lando Calrissian, and as well as Emilia Clarke and Woody Harrelson. Now, the thing is, I understand why Disney stepped in. I mean, you have, no matter how much flack that Kathleen Kennedy gets from the hardened Star Wars fans, that she has removed a huge part of the expanded canon, and she has made, for all the Mary Sue comparisons with the complaints which you had in Force Awakens as well. I completely understand why Lawrence Kasdan and Kathleen Turner put their foot down. You do not want a Star Wars movie not like a Star Wars movie. A Star Wars movie has to feel like a Star Wars movie. And I had my reservations with Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Make no mistake, I love these guys. I absolutely love what they bring to the table. But I also am worried because I love Star Wars more than any other franchise, anything else in the world. I love Star Wars, and I don't want a Star Wars movie which does not look like Star Wars, which is just another buddy cop comedy or something like that. I want a Star Wars film to feel like you are in a galaxy far, far away. It has to have that, give you that warm, fuzzy feeling. The things which you associate with a good Star Wars film, like something which Rogue One did beautifully. And I think that Ron Howard can craft that. He's someone who works well within a studio. He will work beautifully with Lawrence Kasdan and Kathleen Kennedy. So I am quite hopeful for this film. Arindam, let's start with you. What do you make of this?
I agree with you regarding Kathleen Kennedy's decision to take off Phil Lord and Chris Miller of the project, though I have loved every project that they have done so far, including Last Man on Earth. This move is, considering what she has to protect, and the reasoning that was given to us, that they fundamentally did not understand the character. They were just making jokes and asking the actors to, improvise the lines and all. That is okay, but if you do not get the character and it's written by the guy who actually gave us who Han Solo is from the original movies. If you stray far from that, I would rather trust Lawrence Kasdan and his son Joe, who also helped craft this movie, rather than the guys who have done different projects. But I don't know, I would trust Kathleen Kennedy, the most successful producer in movie history. I mean, she was associated with movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, all the Star Wars movies. Like the credentials enough is just like sells the movie itself. Also, there were rumors regarding when Tony Gilroy was hired to complete Rogue One. They were completely unfounded on how Gareth Edwards wanted the ending to be for everyone to get killed at the end of Rogue One. But Kathleen Kennedy did not want that. In fact, when the movie came out, it turned out that it was the opposite. They had an entirely different, and Tony Gilroy was responsible for the most sequence in Star Wars history. That was the Darth Vader just annihilating the rebels. So I just trust Kathleen Kennedy with what she has to offer and what she has in mind. But my problem with them is, why would you hire directors whom you know are so independent, who you know have this capability to improvise everything? Why would you just want them to be studio work for hire people? That's why I think that is the reason why they have gotten Colin Trevorrow. That guy has no idea what to do, and whatever the producers say, he will do that. But then again, you have someone like Rian Johnson, who is one of the most independent voices out there right now, and he's doing this Last Jedi. So it's it's mixed signals that is being sent from Disney and Lucasfilms.
That's actually a pretty good point that you're making. I understand where Abhishek comes from, because of all the Star Wars geeks that I've met, I think he's one of the most passionate people I've been around, and he's very, very into the whole Star Wars canon as well as the extended universe. So I understand what he's saying when he says that he trusts what Kathleen Kennedy is doing, but at the same time, why do I also agree with what you're saying when you say that you don't understand why they have to hire people who have their own independent visions. Even the cast, I love the casting for this movie, the Han Solo movie. You have Woody Harrelson, you have Donald Glover, you have Tandy Newton, each of whom are very good actors in their own rights. I'm not really sure about the lead character, Alden Ehrenreich, but other than that, I think I'm very excited about the casting in itself. And Donald Glover is one of the most underrated guys, or at least he used to be. Now, when you have somebody like that, I can totally understand why maybe you want to explore his full range of acting capabilities, and I'm not really sure what was the exact problems. I don't think we'll ever get to know because whatever comes out in the news might be very different from the actual truth. But the news in itself is very disheartening when you look at it in the first glance. It's there's a lot of changes happening. I know Ron Howard is attached to it now, and that's not really the worst of news. It's actually very good news, in fact. But for there to be so much discord is something that I don't want, at least for my Star Wars movies. So I'm really not sure how to process this news. For at the moment, I don't think it's the most positive news because if directors like Miller and Lord have problems, then it's very possible that other directors might be facing the same kind of issues that these guys are.
Well, for one, Ryan Johnson didn't face any issues, at least not that the public knows of. I think he had a green signal throughout the filming of Last Jedi. I mean, he posted up pictures on Instagram, on all over social media, that he himself was completely balls deep into how the movie comes out. And from whatever we've seen in the trailers itself, the movie looks fantastic. It is exactly what a dark Star Wars movie should look like, which in all estimation, The Last Jedi would be. Like all the middle Star Wars movies in the original trilogy and also in the new trilogy, the second movie is always the darkest, like we saw in Empire Strikes Back also. I think this will be more in the vein of an Empire Strikes Back than, say, an Attack of the Clones. So I think these guys know what they're doing. I just, I didn't want it to be a 22 Jump Street set in a galaxy far, far away. And that was my biggest problem when these guys were cast as well. I understand them doing Flash. I completely get that. Flash has never been done on TV before. At least that fucking TV show doesn't count. That TV show I know has a lot of fans, but fuck that show. Flash has never been done in a scale. As a DC fan like myself, I would want Flash to be done and the same vein, or have the same reverence and the respect like someone like a Batman commands or someone like a Superman commands. I would want Flash to be regarded in the same echelon. All right, so I completely understand that if he gets a brand new canon to work off with, and these two guys, if they're working with Flash, again, more power to them. But I would not want them fucking with Star Wars. So that's my only issue that I had with them. And moving on to the next big news, and that's Wet Hot American Summer 10 years later. Right, it's a very weird segue, I know, but it is what it is. Wet Hot American Summer 10 years later is an upcoming television series, and it's written by David Wade and Michael Showalter and directed by Wade itself. So this Netflix series is a sequel to both Wade's 2001 film Wet Hot American Summer, which is not good, and the 2015 prequel television series Wet Hot American Summer First Day of Camp. And it will consist of 8 episodes and is scheduled to be released on August 4th, 2017. The trailer dropped this week. Arindam, let's start with you. You're one of the biggest fans of this show. What did you make of it?
When you say that Wet Hot American Summer sucks, it just tells you that that person has poor taste in comedy. He does not understand what he's talking about, because that is one of the greatest American comedies ever written, ever made, ever acted. That
Hang on, you are saying this. You're saying this because you watched the prequel before you started appreciating the movie for what it was. It took them 10 years to come on. The first movie is not good.
Yeah, Wet Hot American Summer was one of the greatest movies that I ever saw in college. We got like we saw that, and Joydeep and we discussed this movie endlessly. And when Netflix announced that they had actually gotten the deal, the first thing that came to our head was, how are they gonna cast this? This is exactly like Freaks and Geeks season 2. It just cannot happen. All the stars are too big. And they worked around that. They brought in every resources possible to make it happen. Bradley Cooper's and Amy Poehler, they shot everything together, but they were isolated from the cast, and somehow they made it work. It's one of the most absurd things that you'll ever see ever. I just completely loved the movie. I completely loved first day of camp. You have multiple things happening all together, and each of them makes sense in their own way. The only problem I had with this trailer was they did not have Bradley Cooper in it. So, which I think might be a surprise waiting for us. And again, Amy Poehler seems to be part of the major cast this time, unlike the first day of camp.
I personally didn't like it. So if I don't like it, and I'm pretty sure there are thousands of people who did not like it as well, you just can't dismiss them by saying, because I don't like it, that you suck because you don't like it.
Yeah, it's an obvious choice. This is a very cult thing. If you don't get humor like this, it's obviously not for you.
No, I know, I
don't
get that,
watch it.
Okay.
I get that, I completely understand that. But the scene is that it is, there are movies which are based on the same era and based on the same topics, which do it better than this. I understand it's supposed to be a satire. I understand that, it apes a lot of the 80s films and the 80s tropes and the 70s comedy films as well. But there are movies which do it better, and there are TV shows which do it better than this.
I don't think there's anything that exists like this.
Fucking
It's
Animal
simple as
House.
that. No, Animal House is nothing like Wet Hot American Summer. What are you even talking about? No.
Okay.
See, when you introduce a movie saying that, okay, that movie sucked, obviously it tells you that you are biased and you have no idea what you're talking about. And there are fans who actually like this shit. And that is the reason why it has to, like, such big actors are coming down, and you wouldn't have Chris Pine acting in, like, a freaking show like this for a Netflix show also. And devoting an entire, he is a busy guy. He is part of one of the biggest movies in the cinema. And
These actors were also there in 42. These actors were also there in this fucking comedy movie called 42.
42 is one of the worst movies ever.
What are you talking about? They are doing a lot of love.
Okay, no, you are just bullshitting around. Your analogies don't make sense. 42 was standalone movie. This is the second sequel. Why would someone come back for the second sequel unless you're Michael Bay and you do not care about the property? Because obviously they do not have the budget to do this. They are running it out of passion. If you see the show, if you have actually seen the show, you will see they actually replace A. John Benjamin, who also voices Archie. You know what he turns into in the first day of camp? He turns into a talking can, because they couldn't afford to have so many characters. So unless you know what you're talking about, you can't just criticize it and dismiss it.
Okay, there's a deadlock that's happened between the panel. I think two of the members. One is obviously very pro Wet Hot American Summer, and one is definitely going to be against him in that sense. So I am not really sure. I mean, if you put it like that, it's almost like supporting one person over the other. But I'm sort of with Abhishek on this one. I'm not really the biggest fan of Wet Hot American Summer, and it's not because it's your comedy that is pretty second rate. I don't think so. That's not really the case. I think it's pretty good in that sense. I just never related to it where I saw it. So it's not something that I got really excited about when the news was released that this was also coming back to Netflix. Although one thing for sure, it's got one of the most fantastic ensemble casting that you'll ever see. I think you have so many people attached to it, and so many people who have gone on and done a lot of your very iconic work, iconic pieces of works. Everyone has done something, so it's really no mean feat that somebody has been able to get all of them together on the same show. I think this has to be one of the biggest ensemble cast, and not just an ensemble cast. You understand? This is an ensemble cast of really good comedians, and the who's who of your TV series and TV shows are here in this, and even movies for that matter. But yeah, it's got such a fantastic cast that if you don't want to watch it just because you're biased against the original, it's something that is a little bit stupid in my belief. I think I'll definitely want to watch it, and just because the cast is so fucking fantastic. So, so I guess I am, while I sort of agree with Abhishek that it's not really the most amazing piece of work out there, but I'll definitely want to watch it. In that sense, I'll side with Arindam. I think it deserves to be out there, and so, well, it's good for all the fans that are waiting for the show at least.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to watch it because it's literally what we do. We just have watch it so that you don't have to, and we'll tell you if it's good or not. And let's speak about one property, but unlike this show, I'm really excited for, and that is The Watchmen. And HBO are in talks to produce a new show based on the comic series The Watchmen, and fresh off the critical favorite The Leftovers, which I've just started. Damon Lindelof, who previously took away 6 years of my life because he was associated with Lost, is in talks for a potential Watchmen TV series for HBO. The project is in the early developmental stage, and an official deal is not yet in place, and representatives for HBO and producer that and the property, of course, owns with Warner Brothers have declined to comment. So there's very little that we have to go on at this point in time. But then again, a Watchmen TV series would further expand HBO's place in the comic book business and offer a potential heir apparent to the premium cable network's fantasy drama that is Game of Thrones. As we know, Game of Thrones is obviously ending. It's ending next year, and they would need something to replace. And I think the perfect vehicle for that is something like a Watchmen. Obviously, it will not stretch to 8 seasons, but it is definitely fits into that mold. Anirban, let's start with you. Watchmen at HBO. Do you think it will work?
No, I don't think so. While I'm a big fan of the movie in itself, I actually think that Zack Snyder did a very commendable job in adapting the work of Alan Moore. Although Alan Moore himself won't agree with me, Alan Moore, being the anarchist that he is, he totally hates all adaptation of all his works that have been made till date. I think he hates V for Vendetta as well as Watchmen. He has distanced himself from that movie itself. But the point was that it captured the tone of the book itself very nicely. I think it didn't stray too far away from the source material, which is very commendable when it comes to a movie that had a big budget attached to it and had a lot of studio backing. So it's very surprising that it turned out the way it did. Although that actually worked against it, because I don't think that, at least when the first movie when the first cut came out, it didn't do as well as a lot of people expected it to do. I think it gave us a few very memorable characters, which gained sort of cult status with people who hadn't read the book before. Mainly Rorschach. I think Rorschach gained a lot of popularity, but I think it did such a good job of portraying all those characters and getting to a lot of the issues that were there in the book, that I think to follow up with a TV series sort of nullifies what was done before. So I don't think there is a actual need for making a TV series, because if you're going to sort of get into it, I think it'll have to get into whatever topics the movie did not explore, and we know that this is not really a audience where a lot of people actually bother reading the source material. So while that has that going for it, but at the same time there's a lot of things. I don't think there is a lot left that is left to be explored. So in that sense, how do you stretch this into more than a season or maybe even two? I don't think that's very possible. You have to get into the whole backstories and everything, which again will require involvement from maybe Alan Moore. I'm not really sure if that's something that will happen again because he has been distancing himself from most of his work. So I'm not really excited for this in that sense because I think that a lot of creative liberties might be taken, which I don't want because this is such an iconic piece of work that it doesn't actually require a lot of retelling, in my opinion.
As much as I loved the adaptation by Zack Snyder, it's my favorite Snyder movie, and it is my favorite comic book adaptation after Scott Pilgrim. What happens here is that there were many things in the book that just did not translate well, the artistic side mainly. Zack Snyder did a panel-to-panel adaptation. It was so faithful to the book, like right till the end, but he lost out on the various fields in which he rushed many scenes which were supposed to be very crucial, especially the one in which Rorschach gets interviewed by the psychiatrist at jail. That is one of my favorite chapters. I think if the same treatment and the same amount of time was devoted to that scene, like the scene which was done in regards to Dr. Manhattan's origin, I think that would have been fantastic. And similarly, there are around 10 or 11 different scenes like that involving all the characters. So naturally, you could not do all of them justice. And if you know, because I was so obsessed with Zack Snyder has this huge tattoo of Dr. Manhattan. So obviously, you know, he had to do that. And for me, that is one of the most beautiful moments I've seen in a superhero movie ever. The origin of Dr. Manhattan is flat out perfect. I do not find any flaw in that. But again, you have to see that there are many things regarding the Minutemen which weren't included. Also, there was the entire thing about the squid in which it was completely written out of the final movie. I definitely do understand why Zack Snyder had to do that because it would not make sense. It did not make sense in the book much. Unless you were reading the newspaper clippings at the end of every chapter which said that there was certain artist who had been kidnapped or who was missing somewhere. So that entire backstory gets played out. So HBO has the opportunity to do what was originally conceived and which was originally brought out by Warner Brothers to them over a decade ago, in which they wanted to do that, a 10-episode miniseries, but HBO said that there was no audience for it, and naturally it was made into a movie. So I think this is the perfect medium to do it. My only problem, like Anir, you've said that it is still very fresh in our memory. Some of the stuff that was done there is very iconic. Jackie Earle Haley's role, especially as Rorschach, I definitely think they will amp up on everything on the artistic side, which I'm excited for. But then again, I just think it is too early for that adaptation to come out.
So the entire of last week, I've been just watching American Gods, and that's what we're going to review for you guys now, because American Gods just concluded. I think it just finished on the 18th of this month, and it's been one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love Neil Gaiman. And my introduction to Neil Gaiman in novel form had to be American Gods, and originally it was published in 2001. The television series, of course, was developed by Bryan Fuller and Michael Green for the premium cable network Stars. Fuller and Green are the showrunners for the series, and Neil Gaiman serves as an executive producer along with Fuller, Green, Craig Kragelski, Stephanie Burke, and Tom Beers. The series focuses on Shadow Moon, who meets a strange man named Mr. Wednesday after being released from prison and soon becomes embroiled in a large-scale conflict between the old gods and the new gods, who grow stronger each day. The first episode premiered on the Stars Network and through the streaming application on April 30th, 2017, with the first season, like I said, concluding on June 18, 2017. In May 2017, of course, the series was renewed for a second season. So let's start with you, Arindam. What did you make of American Gods?
Man, it was a trip. Could not believe that they would do stuff on this budget for the TV. I mean, even in movies, they don't go this far. It was totally weird. I haven't read the book till now, and I think I made a wise decision again, just like I did with Game of Thrones by not reading the book first. Because I would have nitpicked and found out, oh, they didn't do this or didn't do that. But over here, I've just immersed myself into Bryan Fuller's wonderful production designs and everything that he has done. I mean, we saw everything that he was capable of in Hannibal. and this was just the perfect adaptation for him. And I just hope and pray that one day he gets his hands on Sandman, because if Neil Gaiman and Bryan Fuller, they get their hands on Sandman, it is going to be another perfect adaptation. I just loved everything about the show right from the first episode. I mean, the reveal was one of the most obvious reveals in the world, but just the tiny little sequences he peppered along the way, everything that he showed, all the gods, all that were featured over here. I'm pretty sure there are going to be more. Just the mix of that old school plus the new school eras of the gods which were featured, it totally blew my mind. I haven't seen anything like this before. And they just went for it. They didn't care about how the audience was going to react to it. By the numbers which are turning up, it did pretty well. And I just want to know how long this will run. Probably Anir has an idea on how many seasons it can last. But if season 1 is an indication, we are in for a treat.
That's actually an interesting point. I mean, I was also thinking about how long this is going to run. If you look at the source material itself, and I love the book. Mrigang introduced me to this, and he said, "You absolutely got to read this." And I read it before I actually read any of his other works. That's including all of the Sandman works. I instantly became hooked to. I've read all of his books, and I feel like nobody does mythology and mythos better than Neil Gaiman. I absolutely believe it, to the point where I am very glad that he's actually attached to this project as an executive producer, and then which it gives him a lot of leeway. It pays to have somebody who is actually written the book to contribute to a lot of the makings of the work itself. And it shows, it absolutely shows, because you can see, even if it takes certain liberties away from the source material, you know that it's going to build up to a certain direction. It's building up to a certain direction. In that sense, it's the same thing that HBO is also doing with Game of Thrones, and also the fact that Bryan Fuller is attached to it. This guy can do nothing wrong. I mean, we have very amazing pieces of work like Hannibal recently, and also Pushing Daisies, which actually prove that this guy actually might be one of the best showrunners right now. If you look at the source material, I think it's going to last for at least 3 or 4 seasons, because they have actually not made it very far if you look at the book itself. So it might go on as much as 3 seasons, or if they especially decide to branch out like the way they did in the first season itself, like they were exploring the backstories of certain characters. So if you look at it from that point of view, then I think it can stretch on for even 5 seasons. That's actually pretty possible. The casting itself is, and this is so amazing. It's something that you can't actually there's no words to put into it. Ricky Whittle is he's an English actor, and I think he used to be a sports star before he joined on to this. So when I first about Ricky Whittle, that was the only casting which I was not really sure about, because in the book itself, Shadow Moon is this huge hulking guy, and he's devoid of a lot of emotions. And then when I saw Ricky Whittle, I was not totally very convinced about whether he would be an apt Shadow Moon. But now, as I watch the show, I think even Ricky Whittle as Shadow Moon makes a lot of sense. As far as the overall show goes, I don't think there is any TV show out there like this. The magnitude in which they have produced this show, as well as how they're approaching each episode, and the way they're building all the stories around each of the characters. They have made sure that everyone has a proper backstory, and some of the scenes are so beautifully done that you just want to pause it, and you keep staring at the screen. One of the good examples, I think it's also breaking a lot of stereotypes. If you guys remember, and sorry for the spoilers, there's this one scene where this character named Salim meets up with a jinn. That scene itself is so beautifully done that it actually is something that you can actually keep watching. the way they have approached it is in a very sensual manner, but also in a manner that actually makes it look pretty grand. So all of these things make American God a pretty good TV series to watch. The problems I have with it is, so sometimes when they used to dedicate an entire episode to the backstory of certain characters, it used to irritate me because I couldn't wait for the story to proceed. Also, partly because I have read the book, so you kind of expect certain things to happen. But I can understand why that is also happening. As I said, this can stretch on for at least 5 seasons if they try to do what they have done in the first season. But the way they have portrayed everything is fantastic, and there is no reason why anybody should not be watching this TV show.
This was some of the best casting that I've seen in a TV show since Game of Thrones, I guess. Because Ricky Whittle, like you said, I severely had my doubts as to whether this guy could act, but this guy was what the audience was. Every time that he has this what the fuck look on his face, like he just does not understand these things which are bigger than him. And every time something like this happens, he's exactly the audience. Because if you have not heard of this property, if you have not read American Gods, or you have no idea about what this property is about, it's going to take you a while to get used to this shit. This is exactly what Bryan Fuller and the people at Stars wanted the audience to be. The biggest revelation in this entire grand scheme of things for me is Emily Browning as Laura Moon, who is basically a zombie. In the book, she starts off as someone who's not likable, and that similar vein is carried on in the TV show as well, because she starts off by someone you can't relate to, someone you just want to just shut the fuck up. But as the show goes on, you understand what she's gone through, where she's coming from, and why she is the way she is. And obviously, what else can you say about people like Crispin Glover, who plays Mr. World, the new god of globalization? And obviously, you have Ian McShane, who just chews the scenery in every scene that he's in. He plays Mr. Wednesday, or Odin, as you would know. But for me, the standout cast member in all of this has to be Gillian Anderson, who plays the media god. She's the public face and the mouthpiece for the new gods, and she is fan-fucking-tastic. Judy Garland, Lucy from I Love Lucy, and David Bowie. Holy shit, I never really thought Gillian Anderson was this good, but oh my god, I'm a huge X-Files fan myself, but I never thought much of Gillian Anderson when it comes to acting. But this was a whole new level of good and fucking great acting, okay? And I'll be really surprised that come award season that this show is not nominated for a few awards. Arindam, what did you make of the casting and the acting?
The MVP had to be Pablo Schreiber, who played the Leprechaun. I mean, that guy, he just has so much nuance in his characters. Every character that he's done in TV so now has been just great. He was an amazing villain in the first season of Orange is the New Black. He played Pornstache. He was amazing as one of the fighter pilots who's just high perpetually in The Brink. And over here, he's a revelation. This is just one of the most favorite roles that I've seen him do. Other than that, I would agree with Abhishek that Emily Browning, whom I have not liked in any role that she has done, she plays this irritating person again, but you see what she's doing, and that just wins you over. Like Anir said regarding the pacing of the show, if you're watching it week to week, it kills you because there are some payoffs, there are some, not cliffhangers exactly, but there are some ends that need to be tied, and if you're awaiting that in the next episode, you just don't get that. So that tends to become a bit frustrating and takes away that enjoyment which you would have gotten if you binged it all the way. Regarding the cast members, who was your favorite, Anir?
I think it has to be Ian McShane. This guy is fantastic in everything he does, but there's this way that he does things that he totally gels in the whole role of being the American Odin. You know, even in the books, he's very true to the character. I don't know if he has read the book or whether he's just that good an actor that he has guessed what the characterization should be like. But this guy totally gets what it is to be Odin. So in that sense, I think he's just killed it. He just killed it. Also, one thing that I'd like to ask you guys, I didn't notice it that much, but do you think that they tried to portray one of his eyes as being a glass eye? because I couldn't tell because it always
Yeah.
seemed to me like one of the eyes was shining more than the other. I think it was the
Yeah,
right eye.
right. In the first episode itself, when he's on the plane, he makes a reference to him having only one eye. I think one of the air hostesses in the first scene also makes a reference to one of his eyes during that scene. So I think it was pretty clear from that. And that's when, remember, I had asked you guys that is this guy Odin? Because there were those ravens always following him and there was one bad eye. So I think it was a pretty clear giveaway from that. It was very funny to see people losing their shit when Neil Gaiman posted some Odin t-shirt which was designed by Ian McShane. And people were pissed because they said it hasn't even aired for an hour and how are you giving away spoilers?
First time I started reading American Gods was I was on a flight from Shillong to Delhi. And I had picked up this book, obviously. I hadn't really read it. I just brought it for Arindam. I thought he would be interested to read it. But unfortunately, I did not have a lot of time. He couldn't get around doing that. So I started reading the book in the while I was on the flight. And obviously, it was like, there was a lot of turbulence outside. And I remember it was raining and all of that. And then in the books, obviously, Mr. Wednesday, in the very start, he says, I'm Odin. Or you would know as Woden, and Woden comes from Woden comes Wednesday. So hence, I'm Mr. Wednesday. So when that reveal hit, and I could see, like, storm clouds brewing. So it was like, I always related that to this book, and probably it's because of such reasons such as this, and I always read books by listening to some music behind, and I always play some Led Zeppelin whenever I read American Gods. I still do. I've read it twice, and I've always listened to Led Zeppelin while I was reading this book, and because I have such vivid imagery in my head, and because Neil Gaiman is such a fantastic writer, that I personally feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I personally feel if this show would be on any other network other than Stars, this would have been grounded and it would not have worked. Because this show, mind you, this show has its low points, and its low points are episodes 4 and 5. Personally, for me, this is when the show becomes a little too grounded, and that is when it doesn't work. Yes, it has the gin scene, but if you take that out, if you take out Somewhere in America sequences, which are there in the books as well, but if you take those sequences out, it becomes a little too grounded for at least those 2 episodes. So that's when the show starts to get a little bit samey and get a little bit too grounded for my liking. And that is why if this was on ABC, God forbid, or if it was on HBO, this show would have been a little too grounded for my liking. And it's perfect that it's on Stars, because it's a batshit crazy television channel, and it has some insane fucking TV shows, and they go to lengths which no one else has till date. I mean, the violence alone in Spartacus is something to behold. So I think it would not have worked in any other TV station other than Stars.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate to some extent, but not really, because you have HBO doing that with Game of Thrones to quite an extent, but the pacing itself is very different for both of the shows, I think. It's the way it's been produced. I think Game of Thrones certainly has its moment where it should look very grand, but sometimes the CGI comes off as a bit not as good. But with Stars, I think they have achieved that thing. At least every scene looks very good. I think it's the cinematography in itself is so fantastically done, and the use of colors is just brilliant, I think, and which I don't think it would have been possible with any other channel, as far as I think. So the thing is, even if it was HBO, I don't think they would have had the kind of resources that they had in its first season itself. I think it would have had to build up a lot of audience. So yeah, I think that's fairly accurate when you say that Stars was pretty much the only place that was batshit crazy enough to give them the kind of resources that they needed to make the show that they wanted.
I don't think it would have worked anywhere but Stars and HBO, of course, but HBO is in a league of its own. Hannibal was on NBC, and they were doing things in Hannibal that I could not believe was being done on cable TV. Like, I mean, they had a flower bouquet made out of body parts with a human hung on it. And they did not cut anything. There weren't any swear words in it, but somehow it was extremely violent, and they were doing it so well, and it was on NBC. Again, full credits to Bryan Fuller with what he was able to pull off. My only problem was when I was watching the pilot and then in the Viking sequence, when you see that absurd CGI blood, it just took me back to Spartacus again, because Spartacus had that, blood splashes which come out of anywhere, and that was exactly what was happening here. So that made me afraid. But again, that episode ended with the practical blood effect during the lynching scene. So that gave me confidence with what he was going to do and what was going to come. And also the CGI was done very well, I believe, during the death, the weighing of the heart sequences. That was when I said, I can't believe the stuff that they're doing. And even during the gay genie sex scene, even during then, when that entire thing, the sexual transmitted wishes happen, it's amazing with what they were able to do. That was quite incredible with the budget. I don't know how much they are being paid by Amazon, but this is just amazing production value.
So very quickly, Arindam, let's start with you. What would be your rating for the show?
It's an A, and I would give it higher, but just because I watched it every week, I would give it an A and not an A plus, because as I said, it doesn't have the same kind of payoff if you watch it every week. Just because of that, I'll give it an A.
It is a solid A plus for me, because whatever my complaints were, they were just very minor part of they don't even matter compared to the enjoyment this show gave me. Just the sheer imagination of Bryan Fuller and Michael Green. Also, I just forgot to mention that Michael Green, who also co-wrote and is the co-showrunner of this show, is also coming up with Blade Runner. He wrote Logan. He is just having a career here. So this is an A plus for me.
As soon as I finished the 5th episode, I think 5th or 6th episode, I texted on the forum that this is my favorite adaptation of anything ever. So for that reason alone, I'm going to give it an A plus. This is just a fucking joy for me. I absolutely love the book. I love the TV show. I love everything that they're doing, and I just cannot wait for season 2. This is going to be one of the best TV shows ever. If you're not on the bandwagon yet, about time you get on it. You guys are not going to regret it. This is a definite hit out of the park. So anyway, let's start with Off the Track. Let's start with you, Arindam. What would you recommend our listeners this week?
I just completed the fantastic Netflix show called Glow. It's about pro wrestling in the 80s, and it's just amazing. If you just think it's another wrestling show, it is not, because till now all the adaptations that have come out, they are sort of parodies other than The Wrestler from Darren Aronofsky, which was the closest the genre got, but that was one depressing piece. This one isn't. It's more of female storytelling done by females, because most of the shows have been directed and written by females, and storytelling like this since Orange is the New Black's earlier seasons, I have not seen things done like this. And also, it does not make fun of the world of pro wrestling, which most of the adaptations do. This is just a straight up homage. There are tons of former WWE wrestlers. It gives you that authentic feel. I couldn't believe that Mark Maron is such a good actor, and he just kills it along with Alison Brie. I just loved it through and through. I guess you guys might be hearing a detailed review from us during the next podcast, so definitely do check it out. It has only 10 episodes and it's 30 minutes each, so it's a definite recommendation from me.
I started watching The Bad Batch, which is not really something that I would recommend, but I think the OST is something that you should catch. For example, it's got All That She Wants by Ace of Base, and it's also got 50 on Our Foreheads by White Lies. So it's got a perfect soundtrack, but it doesn't have the perfect movie. The other thing that I caught this week was I caught it on Netflix. It's this documentary called Counterpunch. I think if you want to watch something that's based on the boxing world, then you should definitely catch this. It follows a few individuals, some of whom have Olympic dreams and some of whom just want to turn pro and earn money. So it just follows the world, and it shows you the exact state that the boxing world is in, which is not really in a good place because of all the situation that has been created due to the success of fighters like Floyd Mayweather, who prefer money and their records over everything else. And that is the reason why America doesn't have Olympian gold in quite a while now. And that is what this movie also, this documentary follows. And it's very solid documentary. It has a lot of professional boxers who have starred in it. It has Bernard Hopkins. It also has Oscar de la Hoya, and you have Floyd making an appearance here and there. And so I think for everybody who is interested in a fight game and why boxing is not really the premier fight sport in the world right now, you should definitely watch Counterpunch on Netflix.
Sticking to the theme of fight sports, one documentary which I watched this week and I highly recommend that you guys check out as well, especially if you love the sport of mixed martial arts, which is the fastest growing combat sports in the world, is this documentary called The Hurt Business. Well, Hurt Business, it's from the producers of Bowling for Columbine, Fahrenheit 9/11 and Generation Iron. It examines the rise of mixed martial arts fighting through the eyes of today's top stars, right? And you will realize that while watching this, that all of these things you start off wanting when you start fighting, you may or may not achieve it. And once you don't, it leaves you with a sense of what the fuck did I do with my life? And that completely, there's a sequence with Rashad Evans, one of the premier fighters from in the early 2000s, and right now he's just in the doldrums. It shows the entire stretch after his loss to John Jones, his entire stretch of how he got injured, and then UFC were not willing to pick him up, and they eventually picked him up, and then he went on and he lost the fight. If you follow the sport of MMA, it's basically a sport of what have you done lately. So you are as good as your last fight. I mean, people have stopped giving a shit about people like Ronda Rousey. People have already started talking shit about people like John Jones. So these are people who are luminaries, who are like some of the best fighters in the world. But that's how the sport is. People just stop giving a shit about you. Just check out the names, all right, which this documentary has. It has Ben Askren, Josh Barnett, Bruce Buffer, Donald Cerrone, Michael Chandler, Scott Coker, Daniel Cormier, Dana White, Randy Couture, fucking Rashad Evans, Uriah Faber, Ronda Rousey, Ariel Helwani, fucking John Jones, Bas Rutten, Matt Serra, Ken Shamrock, George St. Pierre, Fabricio Verdum, and Michelle Watterson. So this is basically the who's who, the elite of the mixed martial arts game, and this is a fantastic documentary if you want to understand of what makes this sport tick and what makes it one of the biggest sports in the world right now. So this is my recommendation to you. It's obviously up on Netflix. You can check it out. It's called The Hurt Business. So that being said, it brings our show to a close, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for listening this week. And you guys can check out all our old podcasts. Visit www.indiannerve.com/podcast. And we have our review of Baby Driver up as well, so you can check that out, and like our Facebook page as well. The link is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on that bell icon so you don't miss out on any other episode. You can find us on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. The link to all our social media accounts is in the description below. Or you can visit us on www.indiannerve.com/podcast if you want to check out our previous episodes as well. I'd like to thank all you listeners for your time. Please like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. And from all of us here, wherever you're listening to, we hope you're having a great day, and may the force be with you always.